Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Zach Greenberg. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we are with Dr. Matt Villalobos, who is a black belt in a handful of martial arts and also a doctorate with what is exactly your doctorate considered in? Um, yeah, what is it under?
Yeah, it's a doctorate of physical therapy.
Yeah, so physical therapist, and he has his doctor in such. And before we kind of get into your background, I think that starts to bring up a good question of we were talking a little about that changing in the physical therapy world, and you've had your doctorate for a while, which was uncommon but now mandatory, correct? And kind of can you talk a little bit about that in the world?
Yeah, they so it used to be, I think initially physical therapy started off as a certificate type program and has transitioned to what was a master's degree and is now a doctorate program. And they're kind of making that a standard because they want everybody who practices physical therapy to have their doctorate in there. So it's newer-ish. I think I don't know how many years they've transitioned to that, but one of the nice things is that older practitioners who say had a certificate or master's degree now have the ability to go back for a little bit of schooling and graduate with that doctorate degree.
And how is that been? I mean, from an outsider, that seems like, are there major pros or cons on both sides, or is it mainly just a good, more education is always good sort of thing?
Yeah, it's definitely more education is good. They have a higher expectation for people who have the doctorate degrees, especially in schooling. So schooling has become a little bit longer. I think grad school for me was about 3.5 years. So they're trying to make it somewhat reflective of like what a medical practitioner or physician kind of goes through with their schooling. There are pros and cons to it. I mean, it's very expensive. So especially people trying to get into that type of schooling, it becomes very expensive. But once you get out in the practicing world, especially now, it's becoming a little bit more mainstream and understood that physical therapists are kind of within that doctoral type of mentality and practices, which is pretty cool to have and to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that again leads us into, can you tell us a little about your background, how you found physical therapy and yeah, your physical practice in general?
Yeah, so growing up my entire life, I played sports, and as such, with most people who do any type of sports, got injured a lot. So, especially in college, I got into like football and judo, and kept getting injured, and was seeing the physical therapist constantly with that. And I thought this was kind of a cool career because not only do you get to help people basically from when they're injured to get back to where they want to be, you get to work with a wide variety of people, being like athletes, geriatrics, pediatrics, if you want to. So really for me, it all started because I played a lot of sports and I myself got injured and really got into physical therapy because I was so constantly in that kind of setting while getting back to my sports.
Yeah. In which sports, we know each other just to put out there, like through jujitsu and through our gym, Henzer Gracie Los Angeles. And so I know you through that world specifically. And I know you're a high level striker as well with your Muay Thai. Are there what arts do you like to do still? Or yeah, sports, arts, that whole world.
Oh, I retired from football. I can say that. I love Muay Thai and I love Jiu Jitsu. Those are the two that I really focus on. Obviously, as a kid, I really got into martial arts because I loved the Power Rangers. The Power Rangers were huge when I was a kid. So I think I started off like most kids and got into taekwondo and really enjoyed that type of martial art. And then transition once I got to college, I started practicing judo. And in that time frame, I felt that my ground game was lacking a little bit, and that's why I got into jiu-jitsu as a practice. Sorry, my dog is going to town on the ball. I don't know
Oh,
if you
it's
can hear
okay.
that in the background.
We have
Uh,
ours over here too. I'm wondering if he's going to start barking at any moment. So, um, cool. Yeah. And in your practice, how do you find those things to cross over? Do you have many students that come see you professionally, or do you recommend, obviously jujitsu, Muay Thai martial arts can be kind of a specific thing. So, I assume you don't like to push, your agenda on people, but I guess more just people finding passion through movements, as they're rehabilitating or kind of, working with you through physical therapy. yeah, have you found that process and kind of guiding people along to more movement in their lives?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a lot of it, what I try and base, especially when I'm working with my patients, to really find what they're passionate about. And I'll kind of use, I don't push my patients into like kickboxing or jujitsu in particular, any sort of martial art, but I try and tell them like my experience. So for me, it's a passion of mine. It's kind of something that I use as a way to basically differentiate myself from work as something that allows me to have my me moments. So I have my work life, and then I have my exercise life, and then my life at home. So having this type of outlet is huge for me, and that's what keeps me active, what keeps me healthy. And I try and educate my patients based off of that and say like, hey, like this is what I do, this is what my passion is. I hope you can find a passion to be able to move and go around. So for some people to be dance, for some people to be there's a myriad of exercises. So I try and build based off of that, but not push them into my exact martial art or exercise routine.
Yeah. And being, at least from the outside, a very physical, your profession focuses on the physical aspect of people, but that's so tied in also to mental health. Could you speak a little at all of seeing how your patients, yeah, getting more movement in their life, how that's also affected mental health, and getting also in your non-professional life in jujitsu as far as being a teacher, and martial arts. And I know from my personal experience, seeing people evolve mentally as well as physically is such a cool part of the process.
Oh yeah, it's huge. I mean, there's a bunch of research studies out there that talk about, they compare like anti-anxiety, antidepressant medications to exercise, and what they found is they're comparable. So exercise is equal to, if not potentially better than taking, say, an anti-anxiety or antidepressant type of medication. So it's huge. I think for mental health, being able to be active and move and do these exercises are huge. So when it comes to my patients, oftentimes a lot of them are coming in more of a depressed state because they're coming in injured and they're not able to do what they love to do. So the things that they're doing, they're told like, I might have the runner who has knee pain who's been told by the doctor never run again, or the lifter who's told never to lift again. So a lot of that is telling them like, hey, you'll be okay. Like you can get into this. We can start to integrate this back into your life, but we have to, crawl before we walk before we run. So kind of using that as a basis. But I see it a lot. Once people get moving, it really helps the mental, aspect of it. It helps them. And then, as I talked about, like the jujitsu and kickboxing are an outlet for me. So it's what kind of helps me, having my work life, I can have this outlet afterwards, because sometimes work can be incredibly tough, especially during the pandemic. It was nice having a little bit of an outlet like that to work through, even if it wasn't working with somebody physically there. We're doing a lot of it over Zoom. I was able to continue that exercise and that movement basis. So I always try and promote movement and getting my patients back to what they need to get back, especially for their mental health.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
such a crazy. We both are in such different facets, but two facets in professions that through COVID, like many, were really hit hard as far as music, physical therapy. They're both very in-person, traditionally things, and that are based on having bodies and energy in a room. And so, yeah, that must have been a crazy time, transitioning into, and also, jujitsu in particular, Muay Thai too, but it was an unprecedented time in our sport for sure, not being able to be in a room with people and touch people and roll around with people and close contact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Matt Villalobos, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate being able to pick your brain for a couple minutes for our show. Um, and hopefully one day we'll have you back.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being a part of this.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.